So the WNBA decided it wanted to share a stat, and it basically shared what I'm going to be real here is the most pointless stat in history. So it is a gravity stat. I don't know how gravity is calculated. I cannot stress it enough. Like, apparently, like it is one of these things where it is a new way to justify how much a player pulls defenders out of their normal assignments. And I shit you not. In the
WNBA just set the entire basketball world on fire with a single post. They released a new gravity stat that has left superstars like Angel Reese absolutely stunned and fans questioning if the league even watches its own games. This wasn't just a minor update or a routine leaderboard. It was a statistical bombshell that essentially rewrote the hierarchy of the league overnight. Within minutes, the internet exploded as Caitlin Clark haters began their most aggressive victory lap yet, using these bizarre numbers to claim the rookie sensation isn't the force everyone thinks she is. The timing couldn't have been worse, and the fallout is still shaking the foundations of the WNBA community.
And I shit you not. In the NBA, Duncan Robinson has got better gravity than... I'm just going to look in the NBA. So, you have to scroll to page 2 to get to Stephen Curry, and there's 50 players per page. Sorry. Yeah, there's 50 players per page, and you have to scroll to page 2 to get to Stephen Curry. It's a stat that only came in on board this season. You have got you've got Klay Thompson at number 6. Duncan Robinson.
Gravity is supposed to be the ultimate measure of a player's threat level. It is the physical force that pulls defenders out of their positions just by being on the floor. But the way the WNBA is calculating it right now is being called the most pointless stat in the history of professional sports. We are talking about a metric that somehow places legendary shooters and dominant forces behind bench players nobody is double teaming. It makes zero sense to the players who are actually on the court feeling the physical pressure. When you see a stat that claims the most feared scorers in the world aren't actually shifting defenses, you know something is fundamentally broken in the system.
I'm going to list all the players that list all the very noticeable players that according to the NBA have greater gravity than, I even say, than Nikola Jokic. AJ Green, Tim Hardaway Jr., Simone Fontecchio, Cam Spencer, Corey Kispert, Bryce Sensabaugh, Quentin Grimes, Matas, Modi Mooses, Vit Krejci, Trey Johnson, both Champennies, Cooper Flagg, Dante DiVincenzo, Max Christie, Jameson Battle, Will Riley, City.
The source of the outrage comes from how this new way to justify player impact is being presented. Imagine a world where Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time, isn't even on the first page of a gravity ranking. In the NBA version of this data, you have to scroll past 50 other names just to find the man who literally changed how basketball is played. We are seeing role players like Duncan Robinson and Malik Monk ranked as higher threats than generational talents. It is this exact same flawed logic that the WNBA has now imported, and the results are just as laughable. It is a total disconnect between what the analytics say and what every coach and player sees.
But yeah, it is one of these hilarious stats. It is these hilarious stats where, like, Curry is currently not on the list, but apparently Steph Curry, even when he played all his games, Stephen Curry was still something like 30th in the league. 30th in the league in gravity, even when he was playing before he got hurt. It is one of those crazy things where this is the most irrelevant stat ever. They're like, measures players who shift defense and change the game with every...
For Angel Reese, seeing these numbers had to be a total shock to the system. She knows better than anyone what it feels like to have an entire defense collapse on her the moment she touches the ball in the paint. That is real gravity. But according to these new metrics, that physical reality doesn't seem to matter as much as some obscure mathematical formula. It is insulting to the athletes who do the dirty work and draw the hardest defensive assignments every single night. When the league starts prioritizing meaningless data over the actual impact players have on winning, it creates a false narrative that disrespects the hard work put in by the league's biggest stars.
It is one of those crazy things where this is the most irrelevant stat ever. They're like, measures players who shift defense and change the game with every touch. Like, there's no... Teams don't guard Kalia Copper. Teams actually don't guard Kalia Copper. The Atlanta Dream, where like, we're actually just gonna let Kalia Copper shoot every single time. They went into a game with a game plan of, we're gonna just let her shoot. We're going to just let her shoot. And they won the game because they decided.
Meanwhile, the Caitlin Clark haters are having an absolute field day with this information. They are using this pointless stat to fuel a massive victory lap, claiming that the hype around her gravity and playmaking is all smoke and mirrors. They are pointing to these rankings as proof that she isn't the defensive magnet everyone says she is. It is a classic case of using bad data to support a biased agenda. Even though anyone watching the games can see 3 defenders jumping at Clark the moment she crosses half court, the haters are clinging to this stat like it is the holy grail of truth. It is a narrative war, and the league just handed the critics a brand new weapon.
What we deem as gravity. Defensive, and by gravity we normally say defensive, how they help, how they focus in on a player, what we deem as gravity. Not what this stat says. It's realistic. You know what? Maybe it's Marina May because you know the shot's going up. But like Sonia Citron, for me, it's like, does cutting get taken into account in this? I don't know. Like, I don't even think Ryan Howard draws the most gravity on her team. Teams, if Ryan Howard walks inside the 3-point line, teams don't send doubles. Teams kind of just let Ryan Howard go to the basket. I don't know. Like, in terms of what maybe the gravity stat.
Let's look at the sheer absurdity of the rankings. In the NBA context, you have players like Patrick Williams and Jose Alvarado supposedly having more gravity than Nikola Jokic. Think about that for a second. The man who wins MVPs by dissecting defenses because they are terrified of him is somehow less magnetic than a backup guard. This is the exact level of nonsense we are seeing in the WNBA's latest release. It is a system that rewards certain types of movement or switching over the actual fear a player strikes into an opponent. If your stat says the best player in the world isn't a threat, your stat is the problem, not the player.
It's not the most meaningless stat. And people are going mad being like, oh, I was told only one player had gravity. It's like, it's two sides of this. People being like, oh, it's obviously Caitlin Clark number 1. No, Caitlin's not number 1 this stat. Don't know what it means. I actually don't know what this gravity stat means. Aaliyah Boston draws double teams. Like, what we deem as gravity. What we deem as gravity in general is like drawing double teams, drawing in help, creating space for your team. That is nothing to do with the WNBA's gravity stat. That's nothing to do with the analytic that is gravity. Which is the crazy.
The WNBA's version of this list is even more confusing when you look at how teams actually play defense. Take Kalia Copper, for example. She is an absolute bucket, yet we have seen teams like the Atlanta Dream go into a game with a plan to literally let her shoot. They would rather leave her wide open in the corner than give up anything else. That is the literal opposite of gravity. Yet, in this weird world of analytics, players in those situations are being ranked higher than those who are constantly fighting through triple teams. It's a total inversion of reality that makes the league look like it doesn't understand its own product.
At a greater rate than anything. And most of the time, if player guard big switch screens, if like what we would know as gravity, if a team's able to switch a screen on you, that does the opposite because everyone else stays in position. But maybe switching a screen is greater than drawing 3 people and kicking to a court. I don't know. I don't know what this stat does. I don't know what this stat means. It is nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. And if what we know as gravity, Paige, Aja, Caitlin, Aaliyah, fuck it, even to an extent Brittany Griner because they double down on her. But yeah, that's the video. See you guys.
The most glaring omission in these rankings involves the most dominant players in the paint. Aja Wilson is arguably the best player on the planet right now, but reports suggest she doesn't even crack the top 50 in this specific gravity stat. How is that even possible? Aja Wilson is the focal point of every single defensive scheme she faces. Teams build their entire identity around trying to stop her, yet the math says she isn't shifting the defense. It is this kind of statistical gaslighting that makes fans and players lose faith in advanced analytics. It feels like the league is trying to be smart at the expense of being accurate. We have always defined gravity as the ability to draw double teams and create open space for teammates. When Aaliyah Boston rolls to the rim and 3 defenders collapse on her, that is gravity in its purest form. When Brittany Griner stands in the post and forces the opposing team to send help from the opposite wing, that is gravity. But this new analytic seems to ignore those physical moments. Instead, it seems to be looking at things like how often a defense switches a screen. That is not gravity. That is just a defensive scheme choice. Confusing the two is a massive mistake that ruins the credibility of the entire project. The victory lap being taken by the critics is particularly frustrating because it ignores the context of the game. They are acting like this stat proves Caitlin Clark hasn't been drawing massive defensive attention this season, but anyone with a set of eyes can see that the Clark effect is real. Teams are playing her tighter than almost any rookie in history. They are picking her up full court and doubling her off every single pick and roll. If a stat says that isn't happening, or that it's less impactful than a random role player's movement, then the stat is failing to capture the essence of the game. One theory is that the stat is heavily skewed by how teams handle switches. If a player comes off a screen and the defense switches, the data might see that as shifting the defense. But as many experts have pointed out, switching is often done to keep the defense in balance. It is the opposite of being pulled out of position. Drawing 3 people to the ball is what actually breaks a defense down. If the WNBA is valuing a simple switch over a defensive collapse, they are measuring the wrong thing entirely. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes a player dangerous on the basketball court. The ripple effect of this pointless stat is already being felt across social media. It has reignited the toxic debates that have plagued the league all season. Instead of celebrating the incredible talent on the floor, fans are arguing over a spreadsheet that clearly has glitches. It puts players like Angel Reese in a weird position where they have to defend their own impact against numbers that don't make sense. It is exhausting for the athletes and confusing for the casual fans who are just trying to learn the game. The league should be highlighting greatness, not creating confusion with half-baked metrics. Think about Ryan Howard and the way teams guard her. If she walks inside the three-point line, teams often just let her go to the basket rather than sending a double team. They are willing to live with her scoring one-on-one. That is a lack of gravity. Yet, because of how these stats are weighted, players like her might end up looking better on paper than someone like Caitlin Clark, who forces the entire defense to panic the moment she touches the rock. It is a complete distortion of the competitive landscape. We are rewarding players for being guarded in a way that doesn't actually help their team win. Even the great Paige Buchers and other upcoming stars should be worried about this trend. If this is how the league plans to measure impact moving forward, then the true superstars are going to be chronically undervalued. Basketball is a game of pressure, and the players who apply the most pressure are the ones who should be at the top of every list. You cannot quantify the fear a defender feels when they are matched up against a generational talent. That fear is what creates gravity, not a pre-planned defensive switch that happens a dozen times a quarter. The league's decision to share this stat now feels like a major PR blunder. They had to know that in the current climate, any data involving Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese was going to be weaponized. By putting out something so obviously flawed, they have given the haters a platform to scream even louder. It's a victory lap built on a foundation of sand, but that doesn't stop it from being loud and annoying. The WNBA needs to do a better job of vetting these analytics before they release them to a public that is already looking for reasons to tear these women down. The irony is that the players themselves know exactly who has gravity. They know which players they dread guarding and which players they can leave open. They know that when you play against someone like Caitlin Clark, you can't breathe for 40 minutes. They know that when Angel Reese is on the glass, you have to commit 2 bodies just to keep her away from the ball. No amount of pointless stats will change the reality of the scouting report. The players are the ultimate source of truth, and if they are shocked by the numbers, it's because the numbers are wrong. This whole situation highlights a bigger problem in modern sports: the over-reliance on numbers that don't have context. We are trying to turn a beautiful, fluid game into a series of data points, and we are losing the soul of the sport in the process. Gravity isn't a math problem. It's a physical sensation. It's the feeling of a defense tightening up because they know they're in trouble. If your formula can't capture that, then your formula belongs in the trash, not on the official league social media accounts for everyone to see and argue over. It's also worth noting how this affects the veterans. Players who have been in the league for a decade, like Brittany Griner, are seeing their impact minimized by these new metrics. Griner has spent her whole career being the most gravity-heavy player in the league. Teams have literally changed the rules of their defense just to deal with her presence. To see that ignored in favor of a stat that favors guards who run around screens is a slap in the face to the history of the game. It's a classic case of recency bias and a preference for flashy math over solid basketball. The victory lap from the haters is also ignoring the fact that Clark has been one of the most productive players in the league despite the defensive focus. Even if the gravity stat doesn't love her, the assist and scoring numbers certainly do. It's almost like the stat was designed to find a way to make her look less impressive. When a player is leading the league in multiple categories and drawing record-breaking crowds, maybe we don't need a confusing new metric to tell us if they're shifting the defense. The results are already right there on the scoreboard and in the standings. Angel Reese's reaction is the most telling part of this entire saga. She's part of the new generation that understands the value of social media and branding, but she's also a hooper at heart. She knows when she's being disrespected, and this stat is a form of statistical disrespect. It's the league telling her that her dominance in the paint doesn't count as much as someone else's movement on the perimeter. It's a weird message to send to your rising stars, especially when you're trying to grow the game and attract new fans who are drawn to that very dominance. We have to ask ourselves why the WNBA felt the need to push this specific narrative right now. Was it an attempt to show depth in the league by highlighting role players, or was it a genuine mistake by an analytics department that is out of touch with the actual game? Whatever the reason, the damage is done. The haters have their proof, the stars feel slighted, and the fans are more divided than ever. It's a masterclass in how not to use data. In a season that should be about the incredible growth of the sport, this is a pointless distraction we didn't need. Moving forward, we need to return to a more balanced view of player impact. Analytics are a great tool, but they should be used to support what we see on the court, not to gaslight us into believing the opposite. If a stat says Steph Curry or Caitlin Clark doesn't have gravity, you don't change your opinion of the players, you change the stat. The league needs to listen to the feedback from the players and the fans, and realize that they missed the mark on this one. Gravity is a force of nature, and you can't hide it behind a flawed spreadsheet. Ultimately, this gravity stat feels less like a tool for analysis and more like a tool for chaos. In an era where every play is scrutinized and every rookie is under a microscope, the league needs to be careful about what it validates. When you put out numbers that contradict the physical reality of the game, you aren't providing insight, you're providing ammunition for toxic debates. Whether you're a fan of Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, or the legends of the game, we can all agree on one thing. Basketball is won on the court, not on a spreadsheet that thinks the best players in the world are invisible to the defense.